course, we had other names who did important things in ufology, but for some reason, ladies didn't pay attention to UFOs.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, Binnall of America Audio, with your host, Tim Binnall.
Hello there, my friends. This is Tim Binnall of BinnallofAmerica.com with another edition of Binnall of America Audio, Season 2. It is February 24th, 2007, and this week our guest is Farah Yurduzu, Turkey's first female ufologist. And our conversation really runs the gamut of esoteric material emanating from Turkey. We're covering Turkish history. We're going to talk about underground cities in Turkey, famous Turkish UFO sightings and landings. What is the sociology of the UFO phenomenon there in Turkey? What do the people think? What does the government think? What do the UFO researchers think? Plus, abductions, chilling material here on Turkish abductions. Rumors of Noah's Ark being in Turkey. You know what I'm talking about, those famous rumors of Noah's Ark being on Mount Ararat. Is it true? I don't know. We're going to find out from Farah what the Turkish people think of the rumors of Noah's Ark being in Turkey. Plus, of course, as is the standard here on the program, tons and tons more. International esoterica at its finest here with Farah Yurduzu. For those of you who are unfamiliar with Farah Yurduzu, let me give you a little bit of background on her. Born in Istanbul, at 13, Farah became hypnotic trance medium at Turkey's Center for Metaphysical Study, one of the world's oldest institutions devoted to paranormal research. She went on to become Turkey's first female UFO investigator, author of 4 best-selling books and many magazine articles, and host of her own popular TV show still broadcast throughout the Turkish-speaking world. Now in New York, Farah is bringing her insights to a broader audience. With her deep knowledge of Middle Eastern spiritual tradition and charming no-nonsense manner, Farah is set to become a household name in the West's burgeoning New Age community. Her website is www.farahyurduzu.com, and I'm going to have to spell this one out for you folks, www.farahyurduzu.com. Without any further ado, let's rock and roll. This interview was recorded on January 28th, 2007. Farah Yurduzu on Binnall of America Audio, Season 2. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another edition of Binnall of America Audio, and we have a very special guest this week. It is Farah Yurduzu. She is Turkey's first female ufologist. When I found out she was in America, she's come to America, I was very excited because finding out more about what's going on as far as the UFO phenomenon and the study of UFO phenomenon is in other countries. So I was really excited to hear about Farah Yurduzu and wanted to have her here on the show. I think she's just going to explode onto the esoteric scene in the next couple of years. I have a feeling a lot of people are going to be talking about her and her work. Farah Yurduzu, welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you very much. It's a pleasure for me being here with your listeners at your show. Thank you.
Now, Farah, let's start out first with your bio and the background and how you came upon investigating UFOs in the first place.
Well, in fact, everything started a long time ago than I was born. Everything started in my family, in my mother's family, in late 1800s. My grandmother's father had a close encounter with some creatures, with some beings.
Wow.
And he was a very logical man. How can I say? He was one of the very important mathematics and French professors of Istanbul University in late 1800s. And he was a science man. I mean, he didn't believe in spiritual things or in ghosts or in paranormal activities, whatever. It was a different time. So when he was still a young university teacher, in a very unexpected way, he was visited by 2 beings in his bedroom. And what he describes matches the description of what we know as reptilians. But of course, then they didn't have any concepts such as reptilians or ETs or aliens, grays. So he didn't know what happened. But he was extremely scared. And he remembers very well that two of them were communicating with him. And they were bipolar, so they looked half human, half animal, but they were walking on their two legs, on their 2 feet.
Yeah.
And the only thing that he was very scared, their eyes were reptilian eyes. They had reptilian eyes. And I guess the communication was in a kind of telepathy. And of course, he didn't know how long they stayed with him. Probably he was under hypnosis or something like this.
Yeah.
As he was very scared, he didn't want them. So he tried to send them away.
Mm-hmm.
And when they were leaving, they seemed very frustrated because he didn't accept their visit. He didn't accept the knowledge or the information, let's say, they were going to offer to him, to my great-grandfather. And before they leave the room, they turned back and they looked at him as if, what do you want, or why you are sending us back? And he asked them one thing. Please don't disturb me never again. And they said, from you to 3 generations. Since then, after this incident, in our family, paranormal activities started. His 5 children, 2 boys and 3 sisters, 3 daughters. One of them was my grandmother. They became psychics. They were the first generation psychics. And then the second generation psychic was my aunt, my mother's sister, older sister. She was a very good psychic.
Yeah.
And after the second generation, I became a psychic. I mean, I was born as a psychic. Anyway, so I think this visit or this close encounter with some beings changed something in our family. And if they wanted to give something, I guess they gave us this psychic ability, the ability to communicate with the paranormal world, with the paranormal side of the life. So that's why I found myself in a family who were extremely interested in spiritual things, parapsychology.
Yeah.
And of course, when they were practicing spiritual channeling or parapsychological investigation, this is, let's say, 1920s or 1930s in the years, there wasn't such a thing as UFOs. So remember that I was a child of Apollo moon landings or flights or missions.
Yeah. And
at the same time, I was watching Star Trek. So it was very normal for me to get involved in UFOs. So this is how it started in a way, basically.
Okay. Now, let me ask you a little bit about your psychicness, because I don't know too many people who are psychic in general. What kind of abilities would you say that you have? And it says here that in your bio on the website, it says at 13, Farah became hypnotic trance medium at Turkey's Center for Metaphysical Study, one of the world's oldest institutions devoted to paranormal research. At 13, that's amazing, like a child prodigy.
Well, in fact, the psychic awakening started when I was younger. When I was, let's say, 5 years old, 6 years old, I was able to have out-of-body travels, astral travels.
Oh, wow.
And it was a game for me. And I was thinking that everybody can do that. But then later, I found out that it is not so easy to do that.
Yeah.
And similar things was happening around me. I was able to hear and see some voices and some images, just like it happened to some other people in my family.
Yeah.
But then, after 12 years old, 13, 14 years old, that's teenager years, are very important for psychics and for paranormal activity. Generally, it explodes. The psychic ability or the psychic gift explodes. I had a very extremely unhappy incident related to psychic vision. It was a kind of remote viewing, but by itself, I mean. Now, as you know, remote viewing is a scientific mediumship.
Yeah.
But what happened to me, it was something that I wasn't expecting. So I saw a very unhappy accident. It was happening at the same time in another part of the city.
Yeah.
So after that incident, I started to visit Istanbul's Metaphysical Research Society, which was established in 1930s in Turkey. And still today, I have a very good communication with them. In fact, they shaped my psychic gift under the control and guidance because it was established, it was opened by expert investigators and real psychics. So I decided to visit them and I explained them my experiences. During the same time, I started to see my first UFOs, my first sightings, let's say.
Yeah.
So they wanted to work with me. They wanted to study with me. So we had a long time togetherness with them. And they trained me as a hypnotic medium.
All right.
To communicate with the other realms.
Awesome. Were you successful to communicate with these other realms?
Well, yes. In fact, as you know, last year I was in PLC's paranormal ghost hunting show, the Tenants. So we were a group of psychics. So I was in that show, and we had really interesting investigations there. So, of course, we were in front of the cameras, and I'm talking about myself. I had only one chance to communicate with the ghosts or with the spirits in front of the cameras. You cannot repeat it. And it was a very, very successful 10 episodes. They were very successful 10 episodes. And in the show, they couldn't show everything because of the time limitations. So we were visiting the real ghost-haunted places, real families who were suffering from the ghost attacks.
Oh, wow.
And we were staying over there during a weekend. So we were sleeping there, eating with them, sharing their experiences. And of course, we were lucky because we were able to record ghost activity in front of the camera. So this happens.
Let's move on into ufology in Turkey. You've been here in America for a while, so you've kind of got an idea of what the United States UFO study scene is like. How would you compare and contrast the U.S. ufology to Turkish ufology?
Well, first of all, let me tell you one thing. UFO reality, extraterrestrial visitors, extraterrestrial ancestors, let me tell you, they're always in Turkish daily life. When you look at our very, very ancient first creation stories about the first Turkish tribes and the Turkish mythology, there are so many information about extraterrestrial beings who came from other stars with flying objects. And at the beginning, Turkish nations were tribes, just like native Indians of the United States. And our origin was Central Asia, just like native Indians of the United States. So we were shamanic. We were shamans. We were shamanic before we became Islamic. So we are sharing the same culture and the same background with native Indians of North America. So I am extremely involved in Turkish ancient mythology and creation stories, because in all creation stories tells you about strangers who descended from stars, and who got married with the Turkish tribes, Turkish people, to create a new nation. The other thing is that it is very interesting and attractive to me, the wolf symbol.
Yeah.
Wolf as an animal was very, very important for Turkish nations, because in some creation stories, during these extraterrestrial visitors, before or after, a wolf appears and speaks to the human beings. Speaks with a voice, as if it's a human. And again, in some creation stories, some Turkish tribes born from the wolves. So wolf is the ancestor of the Turkish tribes. So when you look at today's abduction cases, we see the same thing in many abduction cases. Before or after, abductee or contactee sees wolves suddenly.
Now, what do you think the significance of the wolf is? Would that be a literal sense or some sort of shape-shifting type ability?
Shape-shifting, I guess,
yeah.
Of course. I mean, must be a shape-shifting. Because imagine thousand years ago, in a society who are nomadic, they had no information about nothing. I mean, they were living in tents. They only had eagles, horses, and wolves around them.
Yeah.
So the best thing is to shape-shift into a wolf, to communicate with them, to get closer to them, not to scare them. Because a typical reptilian or a typical gray could be very scary for that society. But a wolf is a very normal concept for them, very normal animal, so it was okay. And so in time, a wolf became a sacred animal, a protector. They believed that wolves protect Turkish nation. And one of the Turkish nation's flag was the wolf hat. It is still very important in Central Asia. So the knowledge, the given knowledge is changing the shape, but it's still here.
Yeah.
So all these things brings me to a conclusion that it is not only imagination, it is not only fantasy. There is something, because it is in our history. And then later, especially in 15th century, over Istanbul, there are records of very prominent, very exciting UFO sightings.
Yeah.
One other thing that I always mention in the lectures or in conferences or in my articles, the underground cities of Turkey, in the central part of Turkey, which is called Cappadocia, we have an amazing web of underground cities. They are under the ground and they have 27 floors.
Wow. 27
floors under the ground. Only 7 or 8 of them are open to public as a museum. The rest is still closed. They were found in 1960s.
Mm-hmm.
And the government, of course, started to research them with a group of archaeologists. And it's a huge complex. Today, 3 major of them are very well known. But we know that, the government knows that the total number of underground cities in Turkey is around 100.
Wow.
And they are dated to 5,000 years ago from our time. And we don't have a specific information about their builders, who made them. All we know, they were made with a perfect engineering. They were carved in the natural rocks under the ground. but they are huge cities.
Yeah.
With houses for families, with town squares and everything.
Now, let me ask you a couple questions here about these underground cities, because I'm fascinated. You've just completely blown me away with this. Why are only 7 floors here open to the public?
Only 7 and 8 of them, or 7 or 8 of them are open to public. Many reasons. First of all, it is very expensive to keep doing this research.
Yeah.
It requires a lot of money because it's a very difficult area. It takes years to open them, to be able to go there.
Mm-hmm.
The second thing, yes, now today they are open to public all over the world. Every year, millions of tourists, national and international tourists go there. But again, when you go there, there are differences between the ceiling height. Sometimes it is normal, but sometimes it is very low. So you have to walk on your knees from one room to another room.
Yeah.
And in some parts, the floors are linked to each other with stairs. But again, I mean, imagine they were made 5,000 years ago, maybe before. It is not a perfect stair. So, I mean, and they are very old. Yeah. And it may be dangerous. For instance, people who have heart problems or pregnant ladies, mothers are not allowed to go there.
Yeah.
Because it may be dangerous. So that's why they keep only 7 floors open to public.
Okay.
Technical reasons, I mean.
Yeah.
Technical and very logical reasons.
And then my other question here about the underground cities before I move on, I could talk to you all day about this, but I want to cover other stuff. Mm-hmm. Is that you say they're like 5,000 years old, but we don't know who built them.
No.
Did the people who are studying them discern anything from what they found in these underground cities? Were there any bodies or historical records or anything like that?
Yes. Yes and no. Yes and no. They were found relics from Hittites,
mm-hmm.
but nobody found any bones.
Yeah.
Nobody found any personal objects, archaeological objects. There are no inscriptions or designs on the walls. There is nothing left. Unless some group of people created them, made them, they used them, and then they didn't want to leave anything behind with a purpose.
Yeah.
For some reason, they were very careful not to leave any pictures or any relics or any designs or any symbols on the walls. There is nothing. Definitely there is nothing.
Bizarre.
Yes, very bizarre. It's a very mysterious area. And I know that some investigators, some paranormal investigators had very fascinating meetings and strange encounters down there in the depths of the underground cities. And some people had some close encounters with some creatures. That's another story. But on the surface of this area, it is one of the most busy UFO sightings and landings region of Turkey.
Really?
In 1980s, we had the mass UFO sightings and landings, many landings in that area, in the same area. So if I make you a Turkish map,
yeah,
and if I put stars where we have most of the UFO sightings, that area would have at least 50 stars.
Wow.
Yes, I mean, it is a very, very busy area. So, in general, in our country, in Turkey, we have constant UFO activity time to time. Of course, we don't have UFO sightings or landings every day, but we have often.
Yeah.
We have often, yes.
Here in America, we have, studying UFOs is sort of under the radar. It's not mainstream. It's on the fringe of science. In Turkey, is it the same way? Is ufology on the fringe of science, or is it more okay to study UFOs?
Okay, the lifestyle, the vision is completely different, of course. It cannot be the same.
Yeah.
But in Turkey, when there is a UFO sighting or a UFO landing, or anybody, any individual who has a video camera, if recorded UFO activity, you can see this news the next day on the first pages of the most important newspapers.
Wow.
What is the most important newspaper in the United States?
The New York Times?
Okay. Think about, there was a UFO sighting today. Tomorrow, it will be on the first page.
Yeah.
In a newspaper, just like
New York Times.
New York Times.
Yeah.
And you could see the same news on the primetime television news. If there's a photograph, if there's a shooting, they will show it.
Yeah.
So the mentality is different. We are very open-minded about the UFO activity. I mean, we know that they exist, they are real.
Yeah.
But this doesn't mean that there are people who are against all this reality. Of course, I mean, not everybody is accepting. For instance, I made many television shows in Turkey about UFOs, and I have been a guest in talk shows or debates, and most of the times we were criticized, the people who believe UFOs, we were criticized by astrophysicists or meteorologists. And one of these told me that what I believe, UFO, is a firefly in the sky. I mean, so there are this kind of people, of course. But again, press likes them.
Yeah.
Press and media gives what the subject deserves.
Yeah.
So it is different there.
Yeah, it sounds like it. Now, what about the perspective of the government? Here in America, of course, people who are involved in the UFO field, for the most part, think there's some kind of government cover-up of UFO secrets. What's the government in Turkey have to say about UFOs?
Well, first of all, let me tell you this. UFO subject is not a secret in Turkey.
Yeah.
So when there is no secret, there is nothing to cover it up. You know, there is an expression, they say that what is hidden, what is forbidden is sweet, something like this. They say something like this. When you forbid something to your child, he definitely wants to do that.
Yeah.
In Turkey, paranormal subjects or UFOs are not forbidden, are not hidden, so there is nothing to cover it up. So that's so simple. And in general, in many ways, of course, our mentality, our lifestyle, our experiences are very, very open.
Now, you sort of talked about how the government, there's probably no cover-up there, and how the media is very open-minded. Would you say, and you sort of suggest that the general public's pretty much just open-minded to the idea of UFOs, and it's not as ridiculous.
Extremely. Okay, for instance, if somebody says that I know that UFOs are real, or if somebody says that I had a UFO sighting, that people wouldn't be seen as a crazy or ignorant or something like this, because this is normal.
Yeah.
This is normal. I mean, for us, there is no difference between I saw an airplane or I saw a UFO. It's the same thing. Almost the same thing, not very much same, but the concept is the same.
Yeah.
I mean, you don't think that crazy if somebody says, I saw an airplane in the sky, which is normal.
Mm-hmm.
It's the same thing.
Given that there's this openness and the UFO enigma has gone back so long in Turkish history, are there people in Turkey who try to figure out what the UFOs are, or is it just sort of an accepted thing, like those are the UFOs and we don't know what they are? Are there people And obviously, you're a UFO investigator, so are there people trying to come to conclusions about what they are, studying the UFOs?
Well, first of all, we generally, as a nation, let's say, not only me, we think that they are solid. They are coming from another dimension. But of course, there are questions. Are they coming from the future, or are they coming from another parallel universe, another dimension?
Yeah.
So far, it is difficult to give the right answers.
Yeah.
Because in Turkey, we didn't have, as far as we know, we didn't have UFO crashes. So when you have a UFO crash, you have a material, a solid material to investigate, a metal or something.
Yeah.
But only having the UFO sighting on the air or only being witness to a UFO landing is something different, because you don't have an evidence to investigate in a laboratory. We have many abduction cases, modern abduction cases today in Turkey. And in my family, there are abduction cases. But we don't have abduction investigators in Turkey. That's the problem.
Oh, really?
Yes. That's the problem. Because UFO investigation and close encounter or abduction investigation are completely different things.
Oh.
But they're different subjects.
Yeah.
I think to be able to be an abduction researcher, somebody has to be qualified in many ways, such as a hypnotist or a therapist or a doctor or something, because abduction research most all the time is involved with hypnotherapy, or psychology or psychiatry, and also with surgery, as we know in the United States.
Yeah.
So if we are talking about the implants in the bones or in the tissues, who are going to take them out with surgery? A normal plain UFO investigator cannot do that.
Yeah.
So you can be a very good physicist, you can be a very good UFO investigator, but you must be a surgeon or a hypnotherapist.
Yeah.
So that's why we cannot get any information in abduction site except the memories of the abductees.
Yeah. Can you just talk a little bit about the history of UFO study in Turkey? Like we had in America, we had, after World War II, then all these big names started coming up, like the J. Allen Hyneks and the James McDonald, Donald Kehoe, and sort of the first generation. And ufology as a science has had an evolution here in America. What's the organized study of ufology? How has it evolved over the last few years, and where is it similar and different from America?
It is very different because, as I told you before, we didn't have a UFO crash in Turkey. So Roswell UFO crash and other crashes changed many things in American ufology and, in fact, in international ufology. So something happened, and the crash happened, the Roswell incident happened, and then it was necessary to have UFO investigators. Yeah. That's why UFO investigators decided to be UFO investigators. People decided to be UFO investigators. It's a kind of, how do you say, demand, and there's an...
supply and demand?
Yes. A kind of, because it was necessary. Yes, we had in the past sightings, landings, whatever. But in Turkey, as I mentioned to you before, paranormal studies first started with spiritualism. Yeah. Where I learned how to be a psychic medium. Where I was trained, let's say. Parapsychology. But of course, Metaphysical Research Society of Istanbul and Turkey is the number one always. What they did, they started to publish many books. They translated books from English and from French. Yeah. For instance, George Adamski's books were published in Turkey by this organization in Turkish many years ago. And it has not, I mean, it is not ufology, it is something else, but famous American psychic Edgar Casey, who was known as a sleeping psychic, and he was giving information about Atlantis. He is very popular in Turkey because the same organization translated and published his almost all books many years ago.
Yeah.
So we were learning, reading from his books. And then another group, again in 1970s, a very pioneer, very important leading UFO investigator called Haluk Egemen Sarıkaya. I know it is a Turkish name and it may be a little bit difficult to remember him. I'm repeating, Haluk Egemen Sarıkaya. We can call him just Mr. Sarıkaya.
Okay.
Yes, Mr. Sarıkaya. Mm-hmm. He was a very good investigator. He was an investigator on the location. I mean, he wasn't doing his investigations from his office.
Yeah.
So he was going to the location. And he also started a publishing company, and he started to publish hundreds of books about ufology. So he was getting them translated from English, from German, or from French. And he created a wonderful library, a resource for next generations. So, to me, the most important thing in ufology or parapsychology or in spiritualism, you have to read written text. You must write.
Yeah.
Because the next generations are learning, or they are going to learn from your books.
Exactly, yeah.
So that's why I am very much into writing. Mm-hmm. Because when you write, you share what you know.
Exactly.
Speaking in the conferences is very nice, but how many people can listen to you in a conference?
Yeah.
But when you write, when you leave a book behind you, years are passing and still you are able to share your knowledge.
Yeah.
So this is a very important point to me.
Mm-hmm.
So in Turkey, the investigation is based on the individuals who dedicated themselves to do this very voluntarily without expecting anything exchange.
Yeah.
And of course, we had other names who did important things in ufology, but for some reason, ladies didn't pay attention to UFOs. Yes. It is interesting.
Yeah.
So I decided to, in fact, I started to write magazine and newspaper articles in my early 20s in Turkey. Mm-hmm. Meanwhile, I was a university student at Istanbul University in the Spanish language and philology department. So I was learning how to be a Spanish teacher.
Yeah.
So, but meanwhile, I was writing in newspapers and articles, and I published my first book, I guess it was in 1991. Mm-hmm. I'm not very sure. It was a long time ago. So, and before me, there wasn't any women investigators in UFO field. There were some in spiritualism, in parapsychology, but UFOs, for some reason, always was for men.
Yeah.
Just like science fiction.
Yeah.
Science fiction is generally a man's subject, but ghosts or parapsychology is for women. So that's how it happened in my life with my first book. And then I started to speak in television shows, in talk shows, and I made my own television shows. Then I read 3 more books in Turkey.
Wow. Yes.
So now I'm writing my 5th book for my Turkish publisher. It is going to be in Turkish. I'm trying to finish it. But for some reason I cannot. It must be an updated book, but each day there is a new incident, so I'm deciding to include it to my book, and it never ends.
You were the first woman in Turkish ufology. Since you've come along, has there been other Turkish women come along, or are you still sort of the lone wolf, no pun intended?
You know what? I am not very sure because as now I'm living in Turkey, I'm not living in Turkey as I'm living in the United States. I don't have very much contact. So it is difficult to give you a specific answer in this.
Okay.
But on the web, I can see there are lots of forums. There are lots of chat groups.
Yeah.
In UFOs, but these are the UFO fans. I mean, I see girls' names, of course, I mean, because they are reading the books they are interested in. But professionally, anybody who wrote a book or made a television show, as far as I know, I don't know.
Yeah.
Personally, I don't know.
Okay. Now, you've sort of mentioned a couple times here UFO landings. Now, that's pretty rare as far as I know here in America, but it sounds like it happens a lot in Turkey. Talk a little bit about these UFO landings and some of the circumstances around them and whatever you can tell us about that, because it sounds interesting.
Well, again, in 1980s, in the same area, in Cappadocia area, we started to have mass sightings. So it took only 1 year, every month. And most of the times, people were getting together in the night, and they were waiting for the UFOs.
Yeah. And
UFOs were coming. And first, the first one was coming up. Then their number was 3, 5, 10, 20, and they were counting. Witnesses were counting until 100, 180.
Wow.
Yes. And in one case, and these are reports by the journalists, by the reporters of the newspapers. Everything is in newspapers, I mean. I guess they had a kind of close encounter with one of the UFOs, and the UFO was started getting lower a little bit over a hill. Mm-hmm. And there was a group of people from the town, policemen and teachers, journalists, and they decided to turn on and off their flashlights at the same time to make a sign off to the UFO, and they decided they started to do it. And the UFO gave them a reaction and answer, responded, turning off and on their light, its light.
Wow.
But this wasn't a landing.
Okay.
This was a kind of close encounter communication.
Yeah.
Because that UFO suddenly got disappeared. In another case, this report belongs to a taxi driver. So he was going back to home in a late evening, and on the right side of the road, suddenly he saw an object, and he thought that it was a van.
Yeah.
It was a truck. But he thought that maybe there was an accident because it was an isolated area. These things are not in the city, of course, out of the city, far from the city. So he decided to stop and ask, do you need help, whatever? So he stopped his car, he got outside, and what he saw wasn't a van, wasn't a cab. It was a huge egg. A huge egg-shaped object, but in the size of a cab or a van.
Yeah.
So he said, this is not a cab. And in the moment he had this thought, the egg-shaped object started to elevate itself slowly first. And it was, emanating light. Yeah. A huge light. So when it was rising up, the light was getting stronger. In one point, the taxi driver couldn't look at it anymore because it was so bright. And suddenly, with a huge speed, it got disappeared in the sky.
Wow.
And so many incidents like this. So, of course, there are close encounters with humanoids, that kind of stuff. It's happening. I mean, you know what? I'm thinking that if we were alone in the universe, if the Earth was the only planet with intelligent beings, and the cosmos and the universe, this would be a huge punishment to human beings.
Yeah.
I cannot imagine a universe without life on other planets.
Yeah.
So now we know the truth, and it is very logical. The rest is to share it, and to understand it.
Now, you say there's not much, if any, abduction research in Turkey. Have you done any research into abductions in Turkey? And
I cannot, because I'm not a certified hypnotherapist.
Yeah.
I'm not a psychologist. I'm not a doctor. I'm not a surgeon. So all I can do is to interview people or listen their stories.
Yeah.
Or to take photographs if they have scars or strange marks on their skin. But this is not an investigation.
Okay.
This is just gathering the reports.
Yeah. And then based on those reports and the information that you have on Turkish abductions, are there any significant differences or similarities with American abductions?
Well, similarities are a lot.
Yeah.
People are having the very, very similar experiences.
Yeah.
Everything is the same, and they can describe you the same looking type aliens.
Mm-hmm.
And as I told you before, in my family there are abduction cases.
Yeah.
And when I speak with my cousins who have they have visited many times,
yeah,
they are telling me the same stories that I generally listen here in New York City in some abduction meetings.
Yeah.
But again, they have no chance to come here and to meet with an abduction researcher. Mm-hmm. And we cannot take a famous abduction researcher to Turkey because we don't have money. We cannot do that. So everything depends on the money.
Yeah.
So when there is no money, there is no abductions. In a way.
Yeah.
It stays as a family story.
Yeah. You say your grandfather's abduction, that the beings were sort of reptilian.
Yeah.
What is there any consensus on the being types as far as people's encounters with them in Turkey? Are they reptilian, Nordic, gray, all of the above?
Well, most of the grays and humanoids.
Yeah.
Human-looking visitors, let's say. Mm-hmm. Not completely human, but if you want, call them Nordics.
Yeah.
But grays, 100%. A lot.
Okay.
A lot. And we have some Men in Black cases, too.
Okay. Do you want to talk about that?
It happened in late, I guess, in 1980s, in a very small town. And the witness, or the victim, was a teacher, the town's teacher. He was living alone in a very tiny house, and one night he was visited by 3 men, completely strangers. He never met them before, and they were wearing all black, typical.
Yeah.
And they said that they were traveling and they needed to stop. And he invited them inside. In Turkey, this is a tradition. When somebody comes to visit you, as a courtesy, you invite them inside to offer some tea, Turkish. In fact, it's a very dangerous habit because you never know who are you inviting in.
Yeah, yeah.
Anyway, so they came and they sit in the living room. In fact, I guess it was only one living room, one bedroom, such a tiny place. So the owner of the house, the teacher, went to the kitchen to prepare tea. And he spent only 3 minutes, maybe less, in the kitchen. When he came back, the guys were gone. And he looked all over. They weren't anywhere. I mean, there wasn't anywhere.
Yeah.
And he didn't hear the door opened and closed in such a tiny place.
Yeah.
So he went outside. He saw a little girl, neighbor's girl, was playing outside. He asked her, "Did you see 3 men?" She said, "Yes, I saw them." And she pointed out the corner of the street. They looked. And what they saw were 3 black dogs.
Dogs?
Yes, barking.
Yeah.
And they suddenly got disappeared.
Wow.
Yes.
Wow, that's amazing.
Well, in Turkey also, as part of the tradition, we believe in paranormal visitors, and we call them jinns.
Jinns?
jinn.
Okay, yeah.
Okay?
Mm-hmm.
It's a part of our tradition. It's a part of our Turkish lifestyle in many ways.
Yeah.
So, in a very short term, I think Turkish people used to call aliens jinns.
Yeah.
So, jinn and alien is the same thing. Because we also have a belief that little children are generally abducted by the jinns in the nighttime. Jinns abduct them from their bed, from their bedrooms, and they take them somewhere in the night, and they bring them back in the morning. And when the little child, 3 years old, 5 years old, younger than 8, 7, and the next morning, child has a black color substance, a paint, on his or her hands and body.
Really?
And I saw this. I saw this with my own eyes. And as we know, after many abduction cases, abductee finds a brown color substance on the body, on the skin.
Yeah.
And sometimes on the clothing.
Huh.
So, what we called visits of the genies.
Yeah.
I think they were visits of the extraterrestrials. And this is a phenomenon that still is happening in Turkey.
Yeah.
I mean, this is something modern. What I saw was in 1980s, that brown color substance. It is not 5,000 years ago.
And what did you like feel this brown substance? Did you smell it? Was there? I mean, what were the characteristics of this brown stuff?
It is. Do you know henna?
Vaguely.
Henna. It's brown color. In India, they make designs.
Yeah.
In your palms.
Okay.
It's a kind of tattoo. Okay.
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
Henna is a plant-based substance.
Yeah.
To make that kind of designs in your palm. So it looks like a henna. It is brown. And it's a little bit sticky. And it is very difficult to wash it off. For instance, when the child wakes up in the morning, wakes up with that substance in both hands. Why in hands, I don't know. And it doesn't go off all day. How much you wash, it doesn't go off. But in Turkey, they say, oh, okay, it was genes. It was genies. So, okay, don't worry about it. They don't care.
Wow.
Yes, it is accepted. I'm telling you, there are no secrets there.
Strange.
There is nothing to hide.
Do these kids that get taken, do they ever say where they went or what happened? Do they don't remember or what?
Well, there are many cases, of course, and some of them remember. Some of them talk about the visitors who come from the closed windows inside of the room.
Yeah.
And it is interesting, at the beginning of our conversation, I mentioned the wolf as a symbol or as a shape-shifting image.
Yeah.
So we know that in abduction cases, Greys or reptilians or Nordics, whoever they are, they use the images that you know.
Yeah.
For instance, if you are interested in angels, you see an angel, but it's a shape-shifting. It is not an angel.
Yeah.
Or if you are interested in cats, you see a cat. If you are interested in deers, you see a deer. So it depends on what images, what information has the little child. What does a little child know? Generally knows the tales, okay? A little child reads Snow White and the 7, midgets? Dwarfs.
Yeah.
Yes. So child says that 3 dwarfs came into my room. Yeah. Because this is the image that she knows. Or if it's a scary image, child can say that I saw the witch of Snow White, you know, the tale of Snow White, stepmother,
yeah,
the witch. she came and played with me or made me cry last night, something like this.
Wow.
So whatever you have in your subconsciousness, they appear to you under this image. And of course, it is not the real image.
Yeah. I wanted to reference one of the articles that I read that you wrote about the Scarlet Woman.
Oh, yes.
Because that kind of ties in here with the with these abductions and that sort of thing, and these contact and weird sort of interaction. Can you talk about the tradition of the Scarlet Woman in Turkey? Is that still going on today?
Yes, it is still. Of course, it comes from the past, but still in some villages in remote areas of Turkey, it is it's going on. So they believe that there is a creature. It shows itself like a horrible-looking woman. And generally it wears red. That's why it is called Scarlet Woman, Scarlet Lady.
Yeah.
And they describe this woman with long teeth and very long nails. It's a kind of vampire style.
Yeah.
And what she does is to attack the newborn babies and at the same time to attack to their mothers, young mothers, basically to get something from them.
Yeah.
This may be their life or their blood or their energy, spiritual energy. There are two possibilities, spiritual vampirism or normal classical vampirism.
Yeah.
Spiritual vampires or classical vampires. And Scarlet Lady also is a big enemy of the horses. So attacks the horses and eats the internal organs of the horse. So cattle mutilations.
Yeah.
Horse mutilations.
Yeah.
So this was a concept in Turkey in the past, and still it is a big fear in Turkey today. But I mean, of course, not in the cities, in the remote areas, in the rural areas. Still today, they feel obligated to protect their animals against this creature.
Wow.
Still today, it's happening.
You're talking about how it's really open in Turkey and how people are more open to the UFO enigma and all these other elements of the paranormal. But you've come to America. Why did you leave this wonderful place where UFOs are okay and to come to a place where UFOs are lame? Here in America, UFO studies is marginalized, and sounds like you were going pretty well over there in Turkey.
Well, but remember one thing. We have the best investigators in this country. We have the best investigators, so which means a lot to me. So being here gives me the opportunity to share the same conferences, same meetings with them. I have been interviewing many well-known names in UFO community since I came.
Yeah. And
I had the opportunity to be a conference speaker in 2005 in NUFOC, National UFO Conference. So, and also this year I will be speaking in Aztec in March. And there are so many cases also here to investigate, such as UFO crashes, close encounters, and being here ufologically in many other ways, it's a big pleasure for me.
Yeah.
So I also believe that you can learn in your country, but traveling teach you more than everything. Traveling and meeting new people, going to new places, it is a big school.
Yeah.
So staying in the same spot doesn't teach you a lot.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes, that's why I really believe in the power of moving ahead, going to new places, meeting new people. This is very important.
Yeah.
Professionally.
Now, have you looked at the UFO culture around other parts, the countries around Turkey? Is it sort of the same, or are they a little bit different, or, because, like, we have an understanding here in America, kind of what's going on in Canada and Mexico and that kind of thing. What about the region around Turkey?
No, remember one thing, that in our neighbor countries, on the west are Balkans.
Yeah.
Greece and Balkan countries, I mean, Central European countries. Not Greece, but Central European countries were in war in the last almost 20 years.
Yeah.
So what we heard from Bosnia, from Kosovo, were only war news.
Yeah, yeah.
Even, if they had a mass UFO sighting and landing every day, they wouldn't care.
Yeah.
So the real life, the real war didn't let them to see the sky because they were trying to save their life.
Yeah.
So it was impossible. On the other side, Middle East, we know what's happening there.
Yeah, yeah.
Nobody thinks about UFOs.
Yeah.
So in that way, Turkey is the only area that we have the real UFO reports and information about some sightings and events. So that's the situation.
Okay. One thing I wanted to ask you about that gets sort of passed around here in America a lot regarding your part of the country, and that's Mount Ararat and the potential for it being the resting place of Noah's Ark. Is that just a folk tale that gets passed around here in America? What do you guys think of that out in Turkey? Is that laughed about out there, or is it actually thought about as possibly real?
Now, there are some people, some investigators, they really believe that the Ark is there.
Yeah.
The rest of the Ark is there. But when you think about the history, when you look at the different mythological stories from different ages, there are so many floods.
Yeah.
And there are so many stories, just like Noah's story.
Yeah.
So which one was the real? Which one are we looking for?
Yeah.
To me, there is no Ark there.
Okay.
But again, I have never visited there. I never traveled there.
Yeah.
So maybe saying this, I'm making a mistake. Maybe there is. So I have to keep my mind open.
Yeah.
So if there is, and if somebody finds it, I'm going to be very happy.
Of course.
But my intuition, my inner voice says that there isn't. To me, that is, again, Noah's Ark wasn't made of the wood.
Yeah.
It was metal.
Exactly, yeah. Well, I figured I'd ask you because, Mount Ararat is in Turkey, so you know better than I would at least. But what about people in Turkey? Do they think that, or is that sort of just like the general public?
Well, it depends. The traditional people, of course, says that, yes, it is a real thing, and one day somebody is going to find it.
Yeah.
And moderate people says that maybe. Imagine Istanbul was Byzance, Constantinople in the past, before Ottomans. And still in some specific areas of the city is full of monuments from the Byzantine times.
Yeah.
We have a monument, and people say that it is linked to some underground rooms. Again, the monument is linked underground room. And there is the wood pieces from Jesus Christ's cross who died on.
Yeah.
So, there are so many stories.
It sounds like it, yeah. You touched on your work here with TLC's Dead Tenants. How did you get involved with this program, and tell people a little bit about it and talk about TLC's Dead Tenants and how it came about?
When I first came here, of course, I contacted with paranormal ghost hunting societies, groups. Yeah. And one of them, PRS, is located in New Jersey. I live in New Jersey, too. It's very close to me. So we started to go to investigations all together as a group because people claim that they have ghost activity in their houses and they are not happy about it. Yeah. So we decided we started to work together as a team. And then our group leader got a phone call from some producers who wanted to make a television show for TLC.
Oh, wow.
And they wanted to meet us. We got together and we met them, and they interviewed us on camera. Yeah. And later we forgot that because 1 year passed.
Oh, wow.
Yes. And then again, they called us and they said, we decided to make the show with you. We said, okay. And in the summer months, we started to shoot the episodes. It was about the real ghost hunting experiences, real families, real houses. So I was in only 5 episodes, I guess, because as we were a crowded team, not everybody was in every show. Yeah. So we were shifting. Yeah. And we really investigated very, very good episodes, very good cases. And the show was based on our investigation as a psychic medium. Mm-hmm. But before we go to the location, we weren't allowed to get any information from the family. Yeah. So we didn't know anything about the backstory. So we were doing our psychic research separately and independently in every room, and we were describing what we see, what we feel in front of camera. Mm-hmm. For instance, it may be, I can see here there is an old lady with a little child sitting and trying to communicate me, this kind of things. Yeah. And then we were describing what we saw to a painter, to an artist, just like in police artists. Yeah. They describe the guy's pictures, how do you say them? Suspects, yes. So the artist was making a portrait based on our description. Yeah. And at the end of the show, we were showing those portraits to the house owners. Yeah. They were saying, yes, this person was my great-great-uncle. He killed himself in that room. Oh, wow. Or this person was my child. We lost her or him when he was 2 years old. That kind of things. Yeah. And we also had a historical researcher. He was doing the historical research about the location, about the first owners, who built the house 200 years ago, or who was the first owners, who lived there, the names, the dates. So we were giving confirmations to the family. So this was the show.
Awesome. And when did did you tape that last summer or?
In 2005.
Okay. And when did the shows air? This past year? Or?
It was aired in 2005 and 2006. And then after United States, it was aired, including in Turkey, in my native country, this year. And in some countries, in Canada, England, India, in Europe, because they have, I guess, agreements. It was Discovery. So Discovery sells the same shows to all over the world. Awesome. Other Discovery channels, yes. It was a good show. It was a good experience, most of all. Yeah. Parapsychological side, yes, it was a good experience. I really enjoyed it.
And are you guys planning on, are they going to make any more episodes of
Yes, it may be. Of course, it may be.
Yeah, you could be waiting another year here. You never know, right?
Different concepts, different cases. Yeah. It may be, of course. It's possible, of course.
And now you said you're working on your 5th book for your Turkish publishers.
Yes, Turkish publishers.
For starters, are there any chances are your books in Turkey going to come over to America and be translated for American readers, English readers, or is that not going to happen?
I'm not planning, because I'm planning to write a book for American readers.
Awesome.
Because, as you know, I'm writing in UFO magazine every month. Yep. So there are articles in my column. Mm-hmm. And also I am a program producer for Jerry Pippin radio show. I'm interviewing many people. So all those interviews and my visits, my travels, UFO-related travels, of course, not touristic travels. I'm making a new book with my impressions in the United States in UFO community, because I'm meeting many interesting people here.
Awesome.
Yes. So it will be an English book too.
Do you have a timetable on that sort of thing, or we're just going to have to wait and find out?
Well, first, of course, I have to finish the
5th book.
Turkish one.
Yeah.
And then I have to polish the English one. Yeah. So I will say at least 1 year.
Okay.
At least 1 year.
And you've enjoyed the American UFO scene, it sounds like. You're enjoying meeting these people. And,
oh, yes, a lot, very much.
Awesome.
Very much.
We're happy to have you here in America, and hope you stay.
Oh, yes, definitely.
Do you have anything you want to plug coming up? You said you're going to be at the Aztec conference. Do you know the dates on that?
Oh, yes, March 23rd, 24th, and 25th. It's a 3 days event, and it will be my first time in Aztec. It is one of the crash sites, Aztec crash. So there will be interesting names, and I'm excited to be there. And hopefully we are going to have lots of guests in our conferences.
Awesome.
And it's going to be an impressive 3 days for us and for the visitors.
And what will you be presenting on at Aztec?
Well, let it be a surprise. Of course, I mean, basically, it will be about some cases from Turkey. Yeah. But some cases from my own experiences. And who knows, until that date, I can add new parts to my speech.
Yes, it's like
I'm still working on it.
It's like your fifth book. You just keep adding things to it.
Yes, I'm adding and adding. This activity doesn't stop. What can I do?
All right, awesome. It sounds great. And we'll have links and stuff up to the Aztec website so people can find out more information about how to check that out.
Okay.
Farah, thank you very much for being on the show. As I said, I think a lot of people in America and ufology scene are going to be hearing a lot more from you and about you in years to come. And I'm very excited and very happy that you've come to America and brought your brand of UFO research to us and helped to bridge the communities of U.S. ufology and Turkish ufology. Thanks for coming on the show, and good luck with your future research, and hopefully we'll be talking again in the future.
Thank you very much. Thanks for inviting, and I wish you all the best for your future shows and for your work in UFO community.
There you have it, folks. That does it for this week's edition of Binnall of America Audio. Big thanks to Farah Yurduzu for coming on the show and sharing some amazing insight into Turkish esoterica. Lots of fascinating information that I'd never heard before. You can find out more information on Farah at her website, www.farahyurduzu.com. Let me spell that for you, FARAHYURDOZU.com. Check it out. Moving right along now, it's time for Binnall of America Audio listener feedback, and this week's letter comes from Tony. No hometown listed, and he is billed here under the subject line as first-time listener. Here's what Tony has to say. I just discovered you. Great conversation on Red Ice Creations Radio. I've been studying various items from 9/11 to UFO info for 2 to 3 years now, always searching for new and refreshing takes on these things. Thank you for your courage to expose and share your thoughts. Just visited your site, will return soon, and pass it along to trusted friends who share my passion for the esoteric. Thanks again, Tony. P.S. Long live alternative radio. Well, thank you very much for writing, Tony. I appreciate the props. I'm happy that you have discovered us via Red Ice Creations Radio. Welcome to all the great folks who may have discovered VOA audio via the RICR radio appearance. Hope you enjoy the Binnall of America audio experience. And while I appreciate your props, Tony, on my courage, I will be honest with you. I've never really encountered any sort of bump in the road as far as anti-esoterica aimed at Binnall of America. So I haven't really needed much courage yet. But hopefully, if the time comes when I need it, I'll be able to display it in the face of devious powers that be. Knock on wood. And also, thank you for passing along the word to your friends who share in the passion for the esoteric. It's that grassroots word-of-mouth buzz that has helped propel Binnall of America onto the radar in esoterica. If you would like to be a part of Binnall of America audio listener feedback, here are the ways to do it. Go to binnallofamerica.com, click the contact button in the top right-hand corner of the screen. That will provide you with the appropriate information on how to get in touch with me. Or write to boaaudio@hotmail.com, boaaudio@hotmail.com, Either one of those methods will put your correspondence on the road to Binnall of America Audio listener feedback. We've got some big news here in the thanks portion of the show. Before we get to that, let's thank the BOA staff. Leslie, Chiron, R. Lee, Joe V., and Ralph Molesworth. I say it week in and week out. There's only so many ways I can say it. They are the people who help make this audio program and the website a reality. Without their help, we would be a shell of what we are. And, as I alluded to, we've got some big news here in the thanks. First, I want to welcome to the BOA staff Tina Sina. She'll be writing the new column Esotericana at BOA every other Monday. Her debut column was this past Monday. Me, myself, and the stranger in the room. It's a little bit about who Tina Sina is and some of her experiences. Tina's keeping me updated on some of her future columns, and they sound fascinating, and I think she's really going to make a mark in the world of esoterica as 2007 unfolds. Welcome to the team, Tina Sina, and thanks for joining the staff of BOA. BinnallofAmerica.com. Make it a part of your everyday search for esoteric news and opinion. If you are a long-time Binnall of America audio listener or an appreciative newcomer and you want to help support the audio series and the website, click the PayPal button at BinnallofAmerica.com and make a donation. No donation is too small, and all donations go towards helping to keep the BOA machine up and running. Click the PayPal button, make a donation, help BOA. It would be greatly appreciated. The next big news, drumroll please, ladies and gentlemen, congratulations to BOA founding father Joe V. on the birth of his son, Gabriel Alexander V. I don't even know if he'll hear this. He's so busy. But congratulations to Joe V. and welcome to the world, Gabriel V. Next week on the show, it is a slightly different edition of BOA Audio. It is an alternative history discussion with Paul Shatskin, the author of The Boy Who Invented Television. This is all about the story of Philo T. Farnsworth, a mere farm boy who conceived of how to make television work and happen. Back in the day, before television was this ubiquitous household appliance, many people wanted to figure out how to get it done and try and make television work and get the invention up and running. Philo Farnsworth figured it out, came up with the concept, and we go through the whole journey of concept to actually inventing the electric television. It is fascinating stuff and reads like a Hollywood movie. You've got underdog inventors, battles with the radio media, industrial spying, and in the end, attempts in retrospect to bury Philo Farnsworth and his contributions to television by present-day media types. Paul Shatskin, The Boy Who Invented Television, next week on Binnall of America Audio. The preview will be up at BinnallofAmerica.com Friday. On that note, I got nothing left to say, folks. Thank you so much for listening. Until you hear from me next week, this is Tim Binnall, signing off.